guys love a good worst list. You crave the blood. And usually I have mixed feelings about doing one. But this year, even at the halfway point, I had no problem putting together a top 10 worst movies of the year so far. They're career killers, missed opportunities, and in many cases, just damn lazy filmmaking. I'm sure some of you will disagree with a few of the films I have listed here, and some of you will feel I missed a few. But that's what the comment section is for. Again, this is my list. It's my list. All right? And, I'm going to be very fair. Borderlands is on here. All right? I'm going to be fair. It's going to get a little ugly, but that's the point of a top 10 worst list. If you don't like the game, don't play. All right, and at the bottom of my worst list, again, I said I'm going to be fair. There are a couple of movies that I actually personally thought had their moments. I don't think they're great, but I thought they were watchable. And you'll see in both cases, interestingly enough, it was the same reason that I liked both of them. I liked an actor. All right, so number 10, but I can't deny though, that things did not turn out well for these movies. And that's why they're on the list. All right, number 10, Argylle. I hope Matthew Vaughn is happy. He sapped his Kingsman formula to the point that it ran dry, going from a brilliant cutting-edge film to this. I'm a big Sam Rockwell fan. I love Sam Rockwell, and I was willing to give Bryce Dallas Howard the benefit of the doubt. I also really like her personally as well. And I think it's unfortunate. This is a role where I think she was miscast, and which ended up kind of being a little insulting. But I think she gave it her all. And also, like the original Kingsman movie, this film has some amazing action sequences, some really great action sequences. And again, I'm a big Sam Rockwell fan, and I loved seeing him in this role. Problem is, though, Sam Rockwell does not have a lot of fans, and the fans that he does have, a lot of them, I liked it, I watched this movie, but a lot of them don't want to watch a movie like Argylle, so he doesn't bring a lot to the table, unfortunately, in this situation. At least he'll work again. Matthew Vaughn, I'm not so sure, but that's okay. He got $200 million from Apple for this movie. $200 million. It didn't all go to Matthew Vaughn, but that was a significant, there's no back end when a movie is, to some degree purchased by these streaming services. It did get a theatrical release, but I suspect that's why Apple overpaid for so many movies and that it delivered the back end up front, which is, not a business model in Hollywood for films for a reason. But anyway, Argylle couldn't even bring half of that theatrically. It couldn't even bring in half that. Now, someone should make a movie about how Matthew Vaughn got $200 million for this film. And poor Henry Cavill, he just can't seem to catch a break. The scene with him and Sam Rockwell on the train, that was such a hoot. It was so good. I think this film, at least definitely, you have to agree, has some great moments. But at least Henry Cavill's Ungentlemanly Warfare has been dominating on digital. But as I said, not really leading to any new gigs for him, which is weird. He does have the new Highlander, though. He does have the new Highlander. All right, number 9, Borderlands. So yeah, my liking a specific actor got me into hot water yet again. For almost 24 hours, I was the only critic on Rotten Tomatoes, saving this movie from a total 0. Although I am kind of proud of this headline. I like Sam Rockwell, just like I like Cate Blanchett. And just like I got a hoot out of Sam Rockwell being in a movie like Argylle, I thought it was hysterical that Cate Blanchett not only was starring in this film, I couldn't believe she had the lead role. I thought she was just going to be a cameo. I thought it was going to be more along the lines of her supporting role as Hela. But here she's the lead. I thought that was so cool. And she's not only taking the job seriously, but I thought did a really good job. She didn't really fit the script, but she herself really gave it her all, and I thought she did a great job. And as I said in my review, she reminded me as if Joan Crawford had made a video game adaptation. I thought it was hilarious. Plus, I didn't have any skin in the game because I've never played Borderlands. This meant nothing to me. To me, it was just another silly sci-fi action movie that I felt was watchable. You get some popcorn, you sit back. It was a hoot, again, as I said. But boy, Borderlands fans were not amused. In fact, they were offended. Even people who don't play Borderlands were offended for some reason. People got very angry with this. And just like Sam Rockwell fans don't want to see Argylle, Cate Blanchett fans do not want to see Borderlands. So even worse box office for this film. I think in Blanchett's defense, she was loved as hell. I don't see why, I can understand why she didn't think this would be any different. And she appeared in The House with a Clock in Its Walls also for director Eli Roth with Jack Black. And nobody seemed to care about that. Nobody thought that was a problem. By the way, I did not realize that was written and co-produced by the boys, Eric Kripke. Fascinating. I think the real issue is that fans and critics alike have just had enough with IP not being taken seriously. And unfortunately for everyone involved with Borderlands, this was the movie that broke them, right? Because Hollywood has made this type of movie for like hundreds of times before, but they never got a negative response to this degree. I wonder if it's like what happened with Exodus, when audiences finally had enough of whitewashing historical roles, and Hollywood was changed going forward forever. And we'll see if that happens again. Will there never be another movie like Borderlands because of this? I'll believe it when I see it, but I think this is quite the cautionary tale, right? Cate Blanchett, of course, will be fine. Everyone involved in this movie will be fine, except for Eli Roth. Good luck, buddy. Whoa. I mean, at least you can always fall back on horror, where he has a reputation and the movies are low risk because they're so cheap to make. Borderlands was not inexpensive, $110 million budget. And maybe Avi Arad will also have a problem because he seems to only be able to make movies like this. Although, will he do this to Legend of Zelda? Oh, I hope for his sake, not only for the fans' sake, but I don't know if he cares. Maybe he's not on social media. But he's got to care about this Rotten Tomato score and box office. That's really bad. All right, so number 8, Monkey Man. I'm sorry, Dev Patel. I love you, Dev Patel. But this movie was bad. It's fun. It's interesting. Sam Rockwell, Cate Blanchett, they saved those movies for me because they were so good in their respective roles. But a big problem I had was that I thought that Dev Patel, who looked darn good in a suit, I must say, couldn't deliver the action. I think he did not do a good job in this role. Like, I get that Patel never intended for this to be the Indian John Wick, but then he shouldn't have agreed to an ad campaign that made it look like it was. Maybe he didn't have a say in it, but then he should have been like, can I get some reshoots? Because this is a problem for my movie. Monkey Man simply couldn't deliver the action that it seemed to promise. The action scenes are not only poorly choreographed, but poorly filmed and poorly executed. A lot of actors, when they decide to do action, like look at Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves did the work and the training that he can be his own stuntman in the John Wick movies. But Dev Patel couldn't even do, I think, the bare minimum. Well, he could do the bare minimum, but his action sequences that he executed himself as an actor and from the directing standpoint were not good. And so that was very frustrating. There's some interesting commentary in the film about the corrupt and wildly imbalanced class system in India, but Netflix's 2021 film, The White Tiger, has this exact commentary, and in my opinion, does a far better job and is far more effective. The White Tiger is a great movie. You should watch that. The White Tiger, in fact, got an Oscar nomination for Best Screenplay. Ramin Bahrani. Now there's a talented filmmaker. Why isn't he working more? He's so good. He hasn't gotten nearly enough credit for his work. Back to Monkey Man. Well, again, I really like Patel as an actor. He doesn't seem to have anything really driving him as a director except employing himself as an actor. We've seen that before with Joseph Gordon-Levitt directing himself in Don John, something Christopher Nolan advised him against, and Christopher Nolan was right. Because these guys, again, they don't have anything to say from a directorial standpoint. They really are more like, look at this great role that I wrote for myself. And you're like, not really, dude. Not really. All right, Monkey Man isn't totally devoid of good, interesting elements, but it just doesn't come together. I don't think it's a good film. Again, I like Dev Patel. It pains me to say it. All right, number 7, Trap. Now, in this case, actor Josh Hartnett is an innocent bystander, just trying to stage a comeback, and he was doing pretty darn good until this movie. He's excellently cast as a middle American dad who's actually a serial killer. Too bad this movie is M. Night Shyamalan coming up with a great idea, but having no idea how to execute it, especially into a feature-length film. Maybe that's why it makes such a much better trailer than an actual movie, because there's really only enough material here for a very short film. I think it could have maybe been a half-hour film, but M. Night Shyamalan stretches it, not just past the breaking point, but even beyond, where you're like, dude, how are you still going with this? And he's like, I am. I've got several endings to go. And you're like, just let me leave the theater. I hate to walk out on a movie. I don't even remember the last time I've walked out on a movie, because you never know. It could be great at the last minute. You hate to, it would be horrible to walk out of a movie and everyone's like, oh, you should have stayed to the last minute. I'll never forget, when I saw The Ring when I was little, and I still remember to this day, people rushing out to, because they wanted to, beat the crowd or whatever. And they missed the ending of that movie. And I always thought they would be like, later be like, why does everyone say The Ring? It's so good. That's so funny. All right, but Trap never had that moment. So while the first 30 minutes or so of the film is pretty good, it goes embarrassingly off the rails after that. Plus, who brings back Haley freaking Mills? I love Haley Mills. And doesn't give her any real lines or a single juicy scene. I mean, that was nuts. It was nuts that he did that, M. Night did that. M. Night is no stranger to making bad movies. He really isn't, but this might be the first one that he's made that's just simply dumb. Oh, so bad. My God. Number 6, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. I missed this one in theaters, so I was so excited when I heard it was coming to digital. I was like, oh, party tonight! So imagine my disappointment. I think the moment that best captures my disappointment in the film was when about halfway through I thought to myself, hey, wait, isn't Paul Rudd in this movie? Kind of. He disappears for a large chunk of it. And I think Paul Rudd is the actor who most, captures what the original cast had. So it's just ridiculous. I mean, like the recent Star Wars films, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire wants to celebrate the original stars while it can, but at the same time introduce new characters. And like so many new characters, so you basically have a movie running on 2 tracks. Well, guess what? There isn't enough time in a movie to cover 2 tracks of characters and storylines. And the fact that Ghostbusters made the exact same mistake is incredible to me. And not to mention the new characters aren't as good as the originals. McKenna Grace, clearly a very talented young actress, but there's a reason that Egon wasn't the star of Ghostbusters. Plus, as much as everybody hates this guy, he's got a point. You can't have underage kids fighting ghosts in the streets of New York City. It is against child labor laws, and it's ridiculously dangerous. Ghostbusters is a franchise that families have always been able to enjoy, but it's never been a franchise about families until now. I think that was fine for one movie, the very good Afterlife, but this, to continue with it, I think is a mistake. It's supposed to be ghost exterminators, period. Nobody wants to see a bunch of kids. Nobody wants to see a fancy lab with interns, etc. I think they're going to have to reboot Ghostbusters yet again. Aw, man. All right, number 5, Kung Fu Panda 4. That's right. This movie made a lot of money at the box office, and it is one of DreamWorks Animation's most successful films in years. But it's just so lazy. It's so lazy, it makes me angry. And that's why it's on this list, and pretty high up. Speaking of wasted talent, Viola Davis's The Chameleon really only enters the story halfway to 2/3 through. I'm like, I saw this movie I saw it to review it, but I was excited about Viola Davis. She's hardly in it. And as soon as you hear that we need a new Dragon Warrior, and Awkwafina Zen shows up, you're like, oh, okay, I can see where we're going with this. But it takes so long to get there. I mean, it's like there's no suspense. You're just going through the motions in every possible way. And really, how can you have Kung Fu Panda without Jack Black's Poe? I don't know how they could do a handoff. And while I do love Awkwafina quite a bit, the Zen character just ain't it, especially to take over. It's just so disappointing after the wildly fresh and inventive Puss in Boots 2, The Last Wish. Oh, that was so good! It didn't make as much money as this one. It made a decent amount. I mean, it's so crazy. It's like whiplash to go from something that's so incredible and really like pushes the edge of the envelope like Puss in Boots 2 to go to something that, again, as I said, is just so obvious and paint by numbers with Kung Fu Panda 4. DreamWorks, just when I think you're back, you make me get nervous again. All right, number 4, Lisa Frankenstein. Speaking of paint by numbers, Diablo Cody has lost the creative spark that she once had because this movie is shockingly derivative. It's trying so hard to bring back the dark teen comedies of the 80s, but the script is just shockingly bad. It's not funny, not at all funny, and it doesn't make any sense. Also, the scope of the film is way too small. So small that you feel like you're watching a student film, but not one that would get an A or even a B. Like sometimes a film that small is exciting because you feel, oh, it's new talent bursting onto the scene, and this is the best they can do at the moment. But that's great. Let's coax them along and encourage them. Diablo Cody's been around for decades. You know, the fact that this is the movie that she put out because she produced it as well, I mean, it's just ridiculous. I feel bad for the wonderful cast. Catherine Newton gives this movie her all, and for a few moments here and there, she does give life to the film. She's very good in it. Liza Soberano and Henry Eikenberry also are very charismatic. I like them in the film a lot. And while I usually like Cole Sprouse, unfortunately here, he just has absolutely nothing to work with. Really, this movie is an insult to the great 80s films that it tries to mimic. And it can't even do, at the very least, a good Tim Burton impression. Although, to be fair, even these days, Tim Burton struggles with that. He still connects sometimes, but sometimes he does not. All right, number 3, The Fall Guy. I know it's a controversial choice, but man, I really hated this film. The trailers were amazing. I was so excited to see it. And I didn't just hate it because I got food poisoning when I went to see it. I'll never forget that. But I just hated the movie itself as well. What a juvenile, skewed look at Hollywood. You know, I really love the Hollywood machine. I love the way Hollywood works. And this, I can't believe that people who actively currently work in Hollywood think this way. You would think people who felt this way about how, if they think this is what they think, if this is what they think about Hollywood, you'd think they would be out of Hollywood, you know, really fast. Because it's just it's such a negative, unhelpful, not fair interpretation of so many different elements. It was like, I thought, very childish, as I said. Also, is this a murder mystery or a romantic comedy? Turns out it's both, but only half of both. Because again, there isn't enough room in a movie. Well, I mean, some really talented filmmakers could maybe do both, but it's hard to do both, and this movie can't do it. Plus, with any kind of romance in a movie, 101, your two leads need to have some spark of romantic chemistry, and also we need to see them fall in love to care about them falling apart. And this movie has neither of those things. Plus, it seems like the entire movie was improvised, and the scenes, like the script itself barely holds together. It has like no structure. Scenes just kind of are, and they peter out until there's nowhere left to go, just like the movie. I mean, sometimes you can improvise a movie effectively. Look at some of Will Ferrell's most successful films. But also look at some of Will Ferrell's bad movies. That's when improvisation does not work. And I think this is more like Will Ferrell's bad movies than his good ones. Ryan Gosling does have some incredible one-liners here and there, but unfortunately they were all in the trailers for the movie. So that was I think a problem for it as well. The Ken magic ain't so easy to duplicate, so Greta Gerwig deserves more credit. All right, number 2, another controversial take. Civil War, that's right. The reason this movie is on the pop culture radar is for 2 reasons. That everyone's worried we might actually have another civil war, and Mr. Jesse Plemons. What a performance. What a scene. He made the trailers, and he's the only thing in this movie that gets even close to what it promised to explore, but doesn't. See, this is actually a movie about the ethics of photojournalism. It was surreal to see an entire room of journalists at my press screening erupt into applause for a movie that is just so horribly damning and negative on journalism. I was like, you guys didn't pay attention to what we just watched? And to that end, the movie does have some solid moments about photojournalism and a good performance from Kirsten Dunst, who's the reason that husband Plemons is even in this movie. But what about the ethics of false advertising, right? This movie doesn't really depict another American Civil War. It's happy to trade off the fear, but it's too scared to actually wade into that fear, to dive into it and explore it. A fear, by the way, that's spreading to other countries, like Alex Garland's own UK. It was all fun and games when he was talking about the United States, but how does he feel now that it's his own backyard? Maybe he understands how we're like, dude, if you're going to talk about our problems, you better actually talk about them. I mean, that's my biggest problem with Civil War, cowardice. It's one of the worst war movies I think I've ever seen. Again, talk about juvenile. What a juvenile understanding of war. Who fights in war, how war is executed and deployment. I mean, it was ridiculous. I was like, as I said in my review, did he speak to a single person who actually has been in, stages of war? And a missed opportunity to actually say something, even about photojournalism. Because even there, I think Garland takes the easy way out. Like, again, it was like the Han Solo moment of photojournalism. You could see it coming a mile away. And then finally, I think we can all agree. I'll be really curious to see if anyone else has a different number 1 so far. And that's that the worst movie to date for the year, and probably one of the worst movies of all time, number 1, Madam Web. Whew, what a stinker. As I said in my review, this movie was so bad that my body actively tried to shut down while I was watching it at the press screening. I wasn't even tired. I was trying to fight it too. I was like, why are my eyelids so heavy? Why do they want to close? My body was trying to protect me from what was on screen. Wow. You know, it's interesting though. Madam Web is so bad, I think it became a must-see for some people, especially since star Dakota Johnson is almost more of a performance artist than an actress, which gives the film and its PR campaign, or gave them, a more surreal quality. But you really have to wonder, why did people laugh at Madam Web but scream at Borderlands, right? Perhaps it's because Madam Web is in the comic book space and Borderlands is in the video game space, which has proven to be a much more aggressive fandom, although it's hard to get more aggressive than Star Wars fans. But anyway, maybe it's because nobody expected Madam Web to be good in the first place. I mean, they just didn't think it would be this bad, coming on the heels of Morbius and Venom 2. And I think part of what made it hilarious was that we were all wondering just how far Sony's Spider-Man-less movies would fall, and then it became, again, as I said, comical to see just how ridiculously low the floor was. You're like, wow, it's like that great meme, our expectations were low, but holy F, right? I also think Madam Web is a sign of the flailing comic book adaptation in Hollywood. Marvel in particular proved there is a lot of money here, so studios became desperate to cash in. Their development teams were like, who do we got? And they didn't bother to understand, or even try to understand, how these characters fit into their franchises and overall stories. Madam Web cannot have her own movie. Now, I think it gets confusing because Madam Web could definitely have her own comic book. But comic book fans pick up a stack of comics each week. They have the bandwidth. They're used to it. I mean, myself included, of reading multiple comic book and comic book-esque stories every week and, exploring, because you want a stack. You want to have a stack. So you're like, sure, let's explore the world of Madam Web. It gives me one more comic for the pile this week. But mainstream casuals, it's just too much for them with both films and shows. They can't handle, they don't have the bandwidth for that level of superhero coverage. And it's a lack of respect that's gotten us here, and greed. And as we've learned from many superhero stories and the like, that's a cautionary tale. Greed and lack of respect always has the same ending, right? Although sometimes it doesn't, which I guess is why everyone feels they're going to be the one that doesn't. But Sony chose poorly, thanks to a total lack of research and understanding of the material at hand. And that's my list of the top 10 worst movies of the year so far. As always, be sure to share your own thoughts down below. I can't wait to hear your own lists and your thoughts on mine. Subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.